Since the beginning, the content featured here has been designed to show and detail what goes on in the life of a rideshare driver. Whether driving for Uber or Lyft, many drivers will tell you there is a hell of a lot more going on as a rideshare driver than simply ushering a passenger from point A to point B and collecting a fare. We deal with a hell of a lot of personalities, requests, and things of that nature, not to mention all the bureaucracy coming from the rideshare companies themselves. Many of our stories can be cheerful. Most are informative. Nevertheless, today's story is downright tragic. Once again, it is Tim with another unfortunate rideshare video in the news. This coming out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
In other news tonight, we're learning new details about the 4 people killed in a crash on the Schuylkill Expressway. A 31-year-old father of 2 was driving for Uber, and he and his 3 passengers all died when a man who police say was driving under the influence suddenly swerved across multiple lanes and hit them. Action News reporter Walter Perez, live outside of Pennsylvania State Police Barracks in Winfield Heights tonight, with the latest on the investigation and more on what we've learned about the victims. Walter.
That's right, Rick. All the victims, all of them are young men, including 23-year-old twins, their 24-year-old friend, and the 31-year-old Uber driver from Philadelphia, described as a loving father who would often go with his church to Kensington to feed and help the homeless. People who knew and loved Giancarlo Santana say his whole world revolved around his wife, his kids, and his faith.
He was a good father. He was a good provider, a good husband. And it's very sad.
Santana was the Uber driver whose vehicle was smashed by an alleged drunk driver on the Schuylkill Expressway early Saturday morning. His 3 passengers included twin brothers Tucker and Christian Schimmelfennig and 24-year-old Michael Comerford. All 3 were from the Scranton area, but went to school and worked in the Delaware Valley. We spoke with Tucker's employer, who says if his brother and his friend were anything like Tucker, they were fine young men.
Just a class act. I don't know how else to say it except for the fact that he was somebody I would aspire my son to be like, that everybody's son should be like.
The alleged drunk driver has been identified as 31-year-old Victor Spazzeri. Investigators say Spazzeri was driving west on the Schuylkill when he suddenly swerved across several lanes and struck Santana's vehicle. The impact propelled Santana's car into a bridge pillar head-on. Spazzeri was treated for moderate injuries at Temple Hospital. All 4 in the other car were killed. Tonight, Giancarlo Santana's family and friends say they simply don't know how to fully explain the situation to his 7- and 5-year-old kids.
The little girl said, if I pray to Jesus, will he bring me back my dad? And you hear that and you break inside, because what can you do?
Now, Spazzeri has since been arrested on suspicion of driving while impaired and homicide by vehicle. Reporting live from Winfield Heights, Walter Perez, Channel 6 Action News. Shari?
Yeah, very sad story. Okay, Walter, thanks.
If I pray to Jesus, will he bring me back my dad? That's got to be the most distressing, disturbing prayer you could ever hear coming from a child. This Uber driver, only 34 years of age, Giancarlo Santana, 5-year-old and a 7-year-old child. So he has really young children, but nevertheless, at 5, at 7, they're going to remember that day for the rest of their lives. The reason I'm bringing this to you, unfortunately, not only because it's an Uber driver that has lost his life in a very tragic way, this is something that could happen to any of us while driving. And I want to present it because I'm going to plead ignorance and see what you guys can let me know in the comments. And you could also help vet newer drivers that are looking to get into this. We're talking insurance. First of all, you got 3 passengers, all young as well. All of them are under 40 years of age. 3 passengers that also lost their life, that perished in this event. How does insurance cover all of these people? Now, obviously, the driver, the driver that's under the influence, what was his name? Victor Spazzeri. his insurance is likely going to resist because he's intoxicated. If you get into an accident while intoxicated, your insurance is not going to cover that. So I don't know if anyone can get relief from the insurance of the suspect. But I believe Uber and Lyft provides us with some form of insurance. So the question I'm going to ask starting out is, will those three families be able to get some sort of relief from Uber? I believe this was an Uber, if they said in the story. So does the families of these three lost in this accident, can they count on getting relief from Uber? My humble opinion, they should sue. They probably will, but Uber is going to fight back. So I cannot see Uber just saying, listen, this is a very tragic event. We really hate to hear about this. We're going to look out for your loved ones. Hell no, they're not going to do that. Uber pushes back on every damn thing. So most likely it will end up in court. If I can follow this story, I will present that to you. But I want to ask you folks that. If you're out driving in rideshare, if you're the driver and you lose your life to something like this, do you believe your family could feel confident that they could recover some sort of relief from Uber or Lyft? Now, I know Lyft has a ridiculous deductible that live drivers rarely want to pay. I believe the deductible with Lyft is what, $1,500, $2,000? Somebody correct me in the comments. You get into a minor fender bender, how many Lyft drivers are riding around with $2,000 they can readily pay for a deductible? So even though this is a tragic event, it should open our eyes and start leading us to ask questions in regards to how insured are you as a rideshare driver? I don't know if the passengers realize what Uber and Lyft's insurance is like. Don't know if they ask questions or not or any of that. But I do feel, based on my personal analysis, being a rideshare driver off and on since 2014, Uber, Lyft, but particularly Uber, can never, and I repeat, never be counted on to do what is morally right. They're going to push back and fight all the time. To some degree, most corporations do because they focus on their bottom line. But Uber in particular, some of the things we've seen them do, I believe these families of these three deceased will probably have to end up retaining some type of lawyer because Uber's probably going to push back. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, though. This is really tragic. Hate to hear something like this. For you drivers that are out in the wee hours of the morning, this is the time this stuff happens. Unfortunately, many of my horrible stories, carjackings, robberies, loss of life involving rideshare drivers, it's all after dark in the wee hours of the morning. This is when this stuff happens. So that's, I often say on the channel, I'm not a fan of driving in the wee hours of the morning. As the saying goes, nothing good happens after midnight. Some would say there's nothing on the road but cops and criminals. Nevertheless, let me know what you folks think. As always, it's your boy Tim. Subscribe to the channel. I appreciate the participation, and I'll see you in the next video.
For the love.